Good morning, I am Kevin Price. Delighted to be with you. Spend some time talking about what's going on with you and your business. Of course, the big news story every moment was about the Armageddon that was happening because of the government shutdown. Actually, I think it just proved how frivolous much of government was when we had over 500,000 people laid off, yet somehow our lives continue to function. Begging the question, why in the world, are we continuing to hire people at the volumes that we hire people at a cost of trillions of dollars in deficits, and a $17 trillion debt, stealing from our future generations? It's really quite extraordinary how selfish of a generation we've become. And so, but government was reopened, so we can have parades now. Everything's good. We can all feel good about it. You, meanwhile, have to come up with a story to explain to your great-grandchildren why they're in absolute third-world poverty. But our guest today, Andrew Mangione, he's been on the program before. He's with the Association of Mature American Citizens, and we're delighted to have you back on the program. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Government reopens, but at what cost? That's a good question, but one that the major media isn't going to ask.
Well, yeah, don't hold your breath there. The government's reopened. It's funny that I want to address your comments about how the government was shut down, yet the sun still managed to come up. Nobody died. Of course, you don't want to see anybody lose their jobs or even be off their job for a short period of time. But I think the vast majority of Americans realized that their lives were virtually untouched by having 17% of the government shut down. And I think it really went to show how bloated and how big government has become, and think about this, and I'm sure you've addressed this on a business program like yours. Non-essential employees didn't work. We don't have non-essential employees in the private sector. We don't hire non-essential employee. Every employee in the private sector is essential. So I think it just kind of proved the point that this government is huge and getting bigger, and virtually nobody was affected by 17% of it being shut down, and the media making a big deal and talking about catastrophic failures in government or services because we had 17% of it shut down.
Although there is a name for those in the private sector that are non-essential. There is a name.
I'm going to let you call it. Okay, I think I know what you're going to say.
It's called unemployed.
Exactly.
And that's the thing that bothers me, among the many things that bothers me, is the government has this luxury of creating essentially social welfare programs and calling them jobs so everyone's self-esteem feels better. I mean, honestly, if 17% of the government could be not working for 3 weeks, why not have them not work indefinitely so we can really get some traction on a $17.5 trillion national debt?
Absolutely. And speaking of the debt, the government's open, but at what cost? Virtually the Congress has given the president unfettered credit, a bigger credit card, and it's just. It's to the point where the president's own comptroller, who's Eugene Louis Dodaro, is telling him that the current spending is unsustainable. And the president's chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who's Admiral Michael Mullen, warned that the size of our national debt is the greatest threat to our national security. And it is, and yet the president remains aloof and doesn't care and wants to continue to spend. So, yeah, the government's opened, but there's a mounting price that is currently being paid and will be paid in the future.
Yep. So what did you think about it from a political perspective of all the shenanigans and the deal that the Republicans worked out? And the Republicans have declared, as a group, they've declared defeat, Ted Cruz being the exception, saying, hey, we made a great point, a very valuable point, and kind of laid the foundation for future efforts. That was his spin on it. It felt, and Ted Cruz is a friend of mine. He's been on my show, probably on my show more than any other show in the country or just about. That probably might change by the end of the year in light of how many interviews he's doing all over the place. But, that seemed a little Pollyanna to me. I think it probably was a defeat for the Republicans, but I'm not sure if there was a win for the Republicans to pull out of that situation.
You make a good point. I don't think the Republicans suffered to the extent that the mainstream media is portraying. I think everybody got hurt, and the degrees of hurt is debatable. All right, but keep this in mind. I was in Washington during Senator Cruz's time on the floor of the Senate. And I know for a fact that senators were inundated with phone calls from their constituents regarding Obamacare. Yeah. What he did raised awareness. what he did mattered. And no matter how his fellow Republicans, those on the establishment side, like Senator McCain, regardless of how their their disdain for what he did or their disagreement for what he did mattered, and it got results, and it raised awareness. And I think in and of itself was worth the effort. Now, you mentioned that you didn't know how much Republicans could win going into this, and you make a great point. The answer to repealing and to defeating Obamacare is simple. Vote more Republicans into office. That's it. They're doing what they can. They are more united. And I was in D.C. during the supposed shutdown the week of October 7th. I had 15 Capitol Hill presentations. It was business as usual for me. So I didn't see a whole lot in terms of people being affected by the shutdown. But the Republicans are more united than they're being portrayed. There is argument, no question. There's argument over the tactics and how to deal with, with policies that this president is putting forth. But they are united, and they do have a voice. And guys like Senator Cruz shed a lot of light on a very unpopular law that the media is ignoring. So what he did was vital, and what he did really mattered.
Before I let you go, why don't you tell us real quickly the difference between AMAC and AARP?
Well, we're a member benefits organization, so you can get the same type of benefits in terms of insurance products and travel discounts, roadside assistance that you can at AARP. We're a 50-plus organization, but here's the biggest difference. We take our marching orders from our members when it comes to the issues that I bring to Washington. Our members set our advocacy agenda. We follow their lead. They hold us accountable. They take part in us crafting solutions to the issues that matter to them, and they are very, very engaged. Our members drive the bus when it comes to our advocacy. We're a member-driven organization, unlike AARP, which their agenda is set by a bunch of guys in a boardroom in Washington. That does not happen with AMAC.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is that you've got some real, Second Amendment, free enterprise, limited government senior citizens out there who knee-jerkily join AARP because that's just the natural thing you do, and they're being represented by an organization that hates their values.
Exactly right. They've got a 50-year. They've been around for 50 years. They're an entrenched brand, and people think when I hit 50, I got to join it because they're prolific direct mailers and marketers. But they don't. We've been around for 6 years now. We've got 1 million AMAC members in all 50 states, and Texas is our second largest state, but it's closing in on California big time. We have almost 100,000 AMAC members in the state of Texas alone, and so the Lone Star State is representing with AMAC, and we're proud to take for our AMAC members' issues to Washington.
All right, thanks so much, Andrew Mangione. He's with AMAC. And it is the senior voice for those of values like yours and mine. You can learn more about them at amac.us. That's amac.us. Andrew, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
When we come back, much more for you. I do want to remind you, best content here shows up over there at usdailyreview.com. While there, like it on Facebook, follow it on Twitter.